No one ever expects the groom to cancel the wedding right at the altar, and especially not for the bride's older sister. But when decades of favoritism, cruelty, and secrets come crashing down in one night, someone finally says enough. Welcome to Family Vendetta 18, where the most explosive family secrets come to light. We tell stories that break the silence, shake the table, and remind you that sometimes, blood isn't always thicker than truth. Today's story. She was the invisible sister, until the groom chose her instead. Keep watching because this wedding ends with a microphone drop you'll never forget. Charlotte Green had grown used to the quiet. The kind of quiet that seeps into your bones when the world has stopped noticing you. At 36, she lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment above a used bookstore in Ashland, Oregon, where the scent of old pages mixed with fresh coffee from the shop below. Her days were filled with spreadsheets, virtual client meetings, and grocery lists scribbled on sticky notes. But her heart beat for only one thing, her son Noah. 10 years old, wide-eyed, and endlessly curious. He was the only bright spark in a life that had known more shadows than light. Since her ex-husband walked out without warning, Charlotte had become both anchor and sail for their little ship. She cooked, worked, laughed, cried, all for Noah. Their small space overflowed with life. Soccer cleats at the door, comic books stacked by the bed, and hand-drawn pictures of galaxies and robots covered the refrigerator. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Charlotte rarely asked for help. Her mother, Margaret, made it clear long ago that single motherhood was a consequence, not a condition. And Isabella, her younger sister, was the family's golden girl. A renowned cosmetic surgeon living in Los Angeles with a picture-perfect life. And now, a glamorous wedding on the horizon. When the invitation came, hand-embossed with gold foil and smelling of gardenia, Charlotte hesitated. She could still hear her mother's voice on the phone, clipped and cool. "Of course you'll attend, Charlotte. And do try not to embarrass Isabella." Charlotte sighed, glancing across the room at Noah, who was carefully sketching a lighthouse. "Looks like we're going to Lake Tahoe, kiddo," she murmured, more to herself than to him. She didn't know it yet, but that weekend would tear apart everything she thought she knew, and piece together a new life she never saw coming. The drive to Lake Tahoe felt longer than it should have. Charlotte kept one hand on the steering wheel, and the other occasionally reaching back to steady the sketchpad slipping from Noah's lap. The pine-lined roads twisted through the mountains, and while the scenery was breathtaking, her stomach churned with something far less peaceful, dread. They arrived at the Greystone Villa late afternoon. The estate stood like a castle carved into the hillside, 3 stories of glass, stone, and perfectly manicured arrogance. Charlotte parked her aging Subaru between a line of luxury sedans and exhaled deeply. "Do we have to go in?" Noah asked, clutching his backpack like a shield. "We do," Charlotte said gently. "But remember what we always say." Noah nodded. "We walk in like we belong." "That's right." Margaret answered the door herself. Her smile was strained, her pearls tight around her neck. "Charlotte," she said with a nod, then turned to Noah. "You've grown. Try not to run around too much, dear." Inside, the house buzzed with wedding preparations, planners rushing, caterers carrying trays, bridesmaids laughing over mimosas. Isabella emerged from a spiral staircase like she owned the air. Her hair was sleek, her white linen romper spotless. "Charlotte," she said, arms outstretched for a staged embrace. "You made it." "We did," Charlotte replied, trying to sound polite. "This must be Nathan's first time meeting you." "He's heard so much," Isabella said, already distracted by a notification on her phone. When Nathan Carter entered the room, Charlotte froze. Tall, composed, with a quiet warmth that didn't match the pomp around him, Nathan extended his hand. "You must be Charlotte. It's really good to meet you." His handshake was firm but kind. His gaze direct yet gentle. Charlotte didn't know what she expected from her sister's fiancé, but it certainly wasn't this kind of sincerity. Nathan turned to Noah. "And who's this?" "Noah," her son said, his voice barely above a whisper. Nathan knelt. I'm Nathan. 4th grade, huh? Tough year. I think I barely made it out alive. Noah cracked a smile. Charlotte blinked. No one in her family ever talked to Noah like he mattered. Later that evening at the rehearsal dinner, the seating chart was a cruel joke. Charlotte and Noah were tucked near the kitchen doors, far from the main table. Yet Nathan noticed. He made his way across the room, pulling out the chair next to Charlotte. Mind if I sit? She stared at him, confused. Shouldn't you be with your fiancé? He shrugged. I'll be seeing enough of her tomorrow. There was a pause, one of those deep, meaningful silences that says more than words. Nathan looked at Noah's sketchbook, then at her. Have we met before? Charlotte's heart skipped. No, I don't think so, she replied. But deep down something stirred. The villa grew quiet as night fell, the noise of wedding preparations replaced by the muffled clinking of glasses and the soft hum of distant music. Most of the guests had retired to their rooms, full from dinner and champagne. Charlotte stayed behind in the study, surrounded by a sea of floral invoices, place cards, and unanswered RSVPs. Noah had gone to bed hours earlier after scribbling a few more sketches of constellations and giving her a goodnight hug that lingered a little longer than usual. Charlotte rubbed her eyes and stared at the seating chart again. Isabella had invited one of her old college rivals and somehow seated her right next to their judgmental aunt. Classic. With a sigh, she reached for her pen to fix yet another mistake. Working overtime. He jumped. Nathan stood in the doorway, holding 2 mugs. Sorry, he said quickly. Didn't mean to scare you. Thought you might need coffee. Charlotte blinked, caught off guard. Thanks. Hey, I guess I lost track of time. He walked in and placed a mug beside her. Then, instead of leaving, he pulled up a chair. You're seriously doing all this? He asked, eyeing the folders and spreadsheets. He shrugged. Someone has to. He chuckled, then fell silent, his fingers running along the edge of the oak desk. After a pause, he looked at her and asked quietly, Do you believe in déjà vu? Charlotte tilted her head. Sometimes. Why? Nathan leaned forward, his voice softer. Do you know anyone named Emily? Her breath hitched. The name echoed like a ghost in the room. Yes, she said slowly. Years ago. I was a hospital volunteer. There was a girl named Emily. She loved space. My son used to draw her planets and rockets. She passed away. Nathan's eyes glistened. She was my little sister. Charlotte's heart cracked open. Her memories returned like a flood. Emily's smile, the quiet nights reading beside her bed, Noah's crayon drawings taped on the hospital wall. I didn't know, she whispered. I remembered you, Nathan said. I didn't put it together until I saw Noah's drawings yesterday. Emily kept every one of them. Said they made her laugh when nothing else could. Tears welled in Charlotte's eyes. She was special. She adored you, he said. You were the only one who stayed late when nurses couldn't. You sang to her. You held her hand. I just did what I could. Nathan looked at her, his voice low. You did more than you know. Silence filled the room again, but this time it felt like something was unfolding, something sacred. Charlotte stared at the table, the wedding plans blurring before her. Charlotte, Nathan said, steady and sure. I know this is insane and the timing's awful. But tomorrow I'm going to need your help. Because I don't think this wedding is going to go the way anyone expects. If you've ever been the quiet one in the room, the one who gave without asking, loved without condition, and still got left behind, this story is for you. Before we dive into what happens next, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. We've got stories that speak straight to the heart. And trust me, what happens at this wedding reception changes everything. Keep watching. You won't believe who grabs the microphone next. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and cold, a cruel contrast to the storm brewing inside Charlotte. She helped Noah into his blazer, smoothing his collar as he adjusted the sleeves awkwardly. Her own dress was a soft slate blue, simple, elegant, chosen with care. It wasn't flashy like Isabella's bridesmaid lineup, but it was hers. "You look pretty, Mom," Noah said, peering up with quiet admiration. Charlotte smiled faintly. "Thanks, kiddo. You ready?" He nodded. "We walk in like we belong." She kissed his forehead. "Exactly." At the chapel, light streamed through stained glass, casting rainbows on the polished floor. Charlotte took her place off to the side, unacknowledged but present. Isabella barely glanced at her when she arrived, too busy perfecting her pose in the mirror. Their mother, Margaret, sat near the altar like royalty, issuing critiques under her breath. The ceremony was lavish. White roses, string quartet, everything picture perfect. Charlotte tried to stay invisible. For Noah. For peace. Then came the reception. Crystal chandeliers glistened above tables draped in gold silk. Guests laughed, toasted and danced. Charlotte kept to the edges, quietly watching Noah enjoy a soda at the kids' table. She was content to stay in the background, until Isabella took the microphone. Her voice, syrupy sweet at first, filled the hall. "I want to thank everyone for being here today, and especially my maid of honor. My sister Charlotte," she said, smiling wide. A soft applause followed. Charlotte blinked. "Maid of honor." Then Isabella's tone shifted. "Charlotte is a single mom, doing it all on her own. So brave, right?" She laughed lightly, pausing for effect. "I mean, no one's ever actually chosen her. But she's dependable. Kind of like a reliable second-hand car. You know, not shiny, but gets you from point A to B." Laughter bubbled in the room. Charlotte felt the heat rise to her face. Her nails dug into her palm. Isabella continued. "Still available, by the way. Comes with a bonus, kid. Any takers?" A louder burst of laughter. Margaret clapped, sipping champagne like it was all part of the fun. Charlotte's breath caught. Across the room, Noah looked at her. His small face confused, hurt. She stood ready to leave, when the sound of a chair scraping across the floor broke the noise. "Nathan." He walked to the front of the room, face pale, jaw clenched. He gently took the microphone from Isabella. "I need to say something." Isabella laughed nervously. "Nathan, honey." He raised his hand to silence her. "This was supposed to be our wedding night," he began, voice shaking. "But the truth matters more than appearances. And here's the truth. Charlotte isn't just my fiancé's sister." He turned, locking eyes with Charlotte. "She's the woman who gave my dying sister hope. She's the reason I'm standing here today." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Charlotte froze. Nathan's voice grew steadier. "And tonight you tried to humiliate her. You mocked the only people who ever showed my family true kindness." He looked back at Isabella. "I'm calling off this wedding." A stunned silence fell over the reception hall. Charlotte stood frozen, every muscle locked in disbelief. Margaret's champagne flute trembled slightly in her hand. Isabella's flawless makeup couldn't hide the flush of red crawling up her neck. Nathan held the microphone like it weighed the truth of a lifetime. "I first met Charlotte years ago," he said, voice steadying. "Not at some family event. Not as Isabella's sister. I met her in the pediatric oncology wing of St. Joseph's Hospital, when my little sister, Emily, was dying of leukemia." Gasps echoed around the room like ripples through glass. Nathan's eyes searched the crowd but kept returning to Charlotte. "Back then I was barely holding on. Emily was in constant pain and I felt helpless. Nurses came and went. Visitors faded. But one person stayed." He looked directly at her. "Charlotte." She volunteered 3 nights a week. She read Emily stories when I couldn't. She sang to her. She sat with her through the darkest hours. Tears filled Charlotte's eyes. Her heart thundered in her chest. Nathan continued. "And her son, Noah, just 5 years old then. He brought drawings every week. Planets, stars, rockets. Emily hung them on the wall by her bed. She called them her window to the universe." Noah, hearing his name, turned to Charlotte. She squeezed his hand. "Emily died holding one of those drawings," Nathan said quietly. "And even in her final breath, she smiled because of them." The crowd was dead silent now. Forks paused midair. Wine glasses lowered. "And now," Nathan said, his voice rising, "you mock them. You laugh at a mother who gave your sister dignity. You humiliate a child who brought light to someone's last days." He turned back to Isabella, who stood rigid, her arms crossed tightly. "You never once asked about Emily. You never cared." Her voice cracked. "This isn't fair." "No," he said. "What's not fair is that the woman I should have loved from the start was standing in the shadows while I played house with someone who only loved herself." Nathan set the microphone down. "Charlotte," he said, stepping toward her. "Come with me." She hesitated, shaking slightly. Then Noah took her hand, his grip steady. Together they walked forward. Past Isabella's stunned expression. Past Margaret's gaping mouth. Past a room full of strangers who were now, suddenly, witnesses to something real. As the heavy doors closed behind them, a breeze swept through the trees outside. The stars shimmered overhead. The night no longer felt heavy. Felt like freedom. The air outside the reception hall was crisp and clean, scented with pine and a whisper of lake water. Charlotte stood in the gravel driveway, still in her slate blue dress, still holding Nathan's hand. But everything else had changed. They drove in silence at first. Noah in the back seat sketching stars, Nathan's hand steady on the wheel. They didn't need to speak. The quiet between them felt sacred, like the moment right before a seed breaks the earth. They stopped at a small lakeside diner, nearly empty except for soft jazz playing and a sleepy waiter wiping down counters. The three of them took a booth in the back, the kind with cracked leather and a view of the moonlit water. Nathan leaned in. "I know tonight was chaos, and I'm sorry for that. You didn't deserve to be in the center of it." Charlotte met his gaze, her voice soft. "You didn't put me there. They did." And for once, someone stood up. He nodded. "I couldn't let it go on. Not after everything you've done. For Emily. For Noah. For people who never thanked you." Charlotte glanced at her son, who was drawing a lighthouse this time, its beam reaching out across imagined waves. A few weeks later, back in Ashland, Charlotte stood in front of a narrow brick storefront with a new sign above the door. Green and bright financial services. She ran her fingers over the painted letters, eyes misty. Inside, the office was simple but full of soul. Soft gray walls. Succulents in the window. A bookshelf of personal finance guides and family photos. Noah's drawings framed behind her desk. Constellations, waves, and a rocket with the words, "Mom is my hero," scribbled in his shaky handwriting. Business grew slowly, but word of mouth carried far. Clients stayed not because of fancy branding, but because of Charlotte's warmth, her precision, her humanity. Nathan, now living in Ashland full-time, never missed a single game. He cheered at every basketball tournament, helped with homework, and always saved the last piece of pizza for Noah. They weren't married. Not yet. But their home was full, of laughter, quiet rituals, and the steady rhythm of a life shared. And Charlotte, for the first time in years, didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, heard, loved. Sometimes the biggest miracles aren't loud. They're quiet. Like a boy's drawing tape to a hospital wall. Or a man finally choosing kindness over appearance. Or a woman finally realizing she was never meant to shrink just to make others comfortable. Sometimes a broken night becomes the beginning of everything. Snow drifted gently outside the window, frosting the edges of the glass with delicate white lace. It was Christmas Eve, and the little house on Maple Street glowed with warmth. Soft string lights, the scent of cinnamon and pine, and the low hum of Nat King Cole playing in the background. Noah had fallen asleep on the couch, curled under a galaxy-patterned blanket, one arm wrapped around the family cat, Luna. Charlotte sat beside the tree, her hands wrapped around a mug of cocoa, heart full but quiet. Nathan joined her, settling beside her on the rug. He reached into his sweater pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Charlotte's breath caught. "I've been carrying this for a while," he said, opening it slowly. Inside sat a vintage emerald ring, delicate and luminous. "It was Emily's," he said gently. "She made me promise. Give it to the woman who shows you what love really means." Tears welled in Charlotte's eyes. "Nathan, you already gave me a family, a reason to start over. I just want to make it official." He held it out, his voice quiet but sure. "Charlotte Green, will you marry me?" She looked at the ring, then at Noah sleeping soundly, then back at the man who had seen her in ways no one ever had. A smile tugged at her lips, tears slipping down her cheeks. "We already are a family," she whispered. "But yes, let's make it forever." Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft, silent and full of promise. And somewhere, perhaps, a soul named Emily was smiling. Sometimes the people who shine the brightest are the ones no one ever sees. Charlotte spent years in the shadows, unnoticed, undervalued, and dismissed by her own family. But her quiet kindness, her unwavering loyalty, and the way she loved without conditions left a mark deeper than anyone realized. She didn't scream for attention. She showed up. She stayed. She mattered, long before anyone said it out loud. The truth is, life doesn't reward noise. It rewards consistency, compassion, and courage. And sometimes, the justice we wait for doesn't come from those who hurt us, but from those who finally see us for who we are. When Nathan chose to speak up, it wasn't just about love. It was about recognition. About finally shining a light on someone who had always deserved it. And that's the kind of love that lasts. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or like you're always the one holding everything together without thanks, this story is your reminder. You are not alone. Take inventory of how you show up for others. Your kindness matters, even if it goes unacknowledged today. The world needs people like you, the steady ones, the silent protectors, the healers. But remember this too. You deserve to be seen, heard, and honored. Don't shrink to make others comfortable. Speak your truth. Stand your ground. And when someone does see you clearly, like Nathan saw Charlotte, don't question it. Receive it. Because love rooted in truth always finds its way home. If this story moved you, if you saw yourself in Charlotte, or if you've ever waited to finally be seen, don't leave without letting us know. Drop a comment below and tell us. Have you ever had to walk away from family to finally find peace? Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because here at Family Vendetta 18, we tell the stories no one else dares to. Stories about truth, redemption, and the quiet power of standing tall when the world tries to shrink you. And remember, sometimes your real family isn't the one you're born into. It's the one that finds you when you're brave enough to choose yourself.